Welcome back, Magda. I'm glad you're with us again after this morning, and I'm sure you've squeezed a lot of work in between the early morning panel and now.
How do you know that? Oh,
Well,
good
not
to see you
difficult to
again.
guess given the number of your titles alone, not to mention the actual scope of responsibilities.
Happy
Magda,
to be back.
And we're happy to have you. And a very important topic for us to cover, hiring people with disabilities. For those of you who don't know that, tomorrow happens to be United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Please remember that. It's been observed with varying degrees of success in different countries across the globe since 1992. So quite a tradition already. Magda, can I start by asking you a question that really relates most directly to the topic of our discussion. You're deeply involved in this particular area of activities. Can you tell us more about it, the whys and hows?
So first of all, I've been on a professional scene for probably well over 20 years, and I've always enjoyed the benefit of working in a company where diversity and inclusion topics were top of the agenda, be it Procter & Gamble first or Google for the last decade. And I sense that now that since I started doing a truly leadership executive positions, it is my duty to drive that culture further. And it's been, I think, a year or almost a year that I've been invited to become the executive sponsor of the Disability Alliance for Google in Poland. And I was thrilled to accept that invitation, as you know, there's so much to do within that area that you know, it's a privilege that I can drive our strategy in that direction.
So in that sense, you're definitely lucky in that your organization already had mature policies and procedures in place. But let me ask you a little provocatively, perhaps, why should companies be recruiting persons with disabilities in the first place?
Well, first of all, recruiting people, having a representation of people with disabilities in the organization should be coming from the fundamental belief that a diverse and inclusive organization is simply a better organization, an organization that performs better because of how employees feel, because of the results that the organization produces. It is absolutely connected with companies' culture and with companies' business acumen. Let me put it this way. And it is I fundamentally believe that if a company has very strong diversity and inclusion strategy, it has the choice of choosing within the diversity and inclusion topics which pillar to go for. And in case of, for example, Google Poland, within our diversity and inclusion strategy, we have chosen to focus disproportionately on the women in tech representation and of people with disability representation within the strategic framework.
You know, it's 2021, and it's actually a shame that we have to go on explaining these things to people, because on the one hand, you've got the proverbial wisdoms like, do as you would be done by. So you imagine you are a person with a minor or a more challenging disability, and should that make you unemployable? Should that deprive you of opportunities in life? I mean, these things, even if you imply very simplistic logic, we shouldn't be even talking about it. And yet here we are. Magda, tell me about the recruitment process itself. What would you like potential employers or employers, recruiters, what could we share about the characteristics of the process? Is there anything special, unique to persons with disabilities?
I believe for all the reasons that you mentioned before, there should be an element of professionalism in there. So yes, there is something specific to that within the recruitment process. If we really want to kind of professionalize our recruitment process, there should be a framework dedicated to hiring people with disabilities. Because if we want to be serious about it, we need to give it a professional framework.
Exactly.
Why? Because
Yes.
hiring people with disabilities is complex. Why? Because there is an entire spectrum of disabilities that it is easier to say that we want to do it. It is more difficult to actually do it the right
Do it.
way. And the way we talk about that at Google is whenever we walk in the shoes of the person who is our target, we come with the best ideas. So the best way to think about it is to try to think about your recruitment process from the point of view of a person with disabilities. It's going to be different if you have sight disabilities. It's going to be different. Your needs are going to be different if these are auditory disabilities, speech disabilities, neurological disabilities. We tend to think only or predominantly about just physical disabilities, and that's too narrow. So please think about it in the broad spectrum. And at Google, the way we kind of frame that, we call that the accommodation process in the recruitment process, the accommodation for people with disabilities. We have a dedicated team that works both with candidates to assess the needs for accommodation and with interviewers to make them aware that the candidate might have special needs. So this is how the empowerment in the recruitment is coming. Specifically, what does it mean? It means that this team is helping, I don't know, to book a wheelchair accessible room for the interview, or to make sure that if that person prefers to come with a service animal to the interview, there will be no barriers to do that. Or maybe that person needs to come with a translator, therefore there need to be 3 people allowed in the room and not 2, or even a virtual translator, or in a virtual setup, that's also possible. Or maybe that person requires 15 minutes extra time for the interview. So these are very pragmatic and very sometimes technical requirements that need to be somehow built into the process for everyone to be aware that this is needed to secure certain basic standards of accessibility.
It really is impressive well, and it also goes without saying that you need to be serious about it, to think it through, to put yourself in my shoes, so to say, in order to understand the actual needs accommodation process, as you called it. But how do you attract candidates with disabilities, assuming you have a degree of readiness for the accommodation process as you described it, and you understand your specific needs? Because I take it, it doesn't work. How does it? You employ also on the, well, predominantly, primarily on the competence basis, right? So, how do you look for persons with disabilities and how to attract candidates with disabilities?
So it's actually one of my, since I joined the Disability Alliances as the executive sponsor, one of my biggest discoveries was that, or the biggest insights was that actually people with disabilities might not be aware that they are welcomed at my company. Okay, so my first priority was like, let's drive awareness. Let's make them aware that they are welcomed in our company. And this is not something just for Poland, but it's true for overall world. That's why at Google we launched a dedicated Google career resource page that's specifically tailored to people with seeking a job with a disability, and you can find there information about our philosophy of hiring people with disability and what are the accessibility enablers that they can expect. As part of driving that awareness at EMEA level, for example, just as we speak, we have the first EMEA Google conference for people with disabilities. We call it DISCO. It is happening right now as we speak, and it is important for us that we engage with the target group, with candidates within the people with disabilities community, or future candidates like with students, to drive awareness that they are welcome and drive their confidence that they should try. But also, it is also the way we are trying to attract the talent is to be part by joining forces within initiatives that are serving that purpose overall, not just for Google. So I'm very happy that you mentioned the International Day of People with Disabilities happening tomorrow, because as part of that, there's this initiative Purple Light Up, and multiple Google offices tomorrow will go purple to celebrate and to demonstrate and to shout out that we are in support of that community. So multiple dimensions.
Magda, one of the ways to measure the success in terms of awareness about your programs, your approach, your overall philosophy towards persons with disabilities is to actually measure traffic on your web page. As you put it yourself, you have a tailored solution to address those specific needs in all their variety. And do you feel the awareness about Google's openness to persons with disabilities as a future employer is already such that you get quite a lot of interest, quite a lot of traffic through this job
No,
board?
not at all. Not at all. And that's why we are in the planning season. We are in 2022 planning season, and within this people with disability pillar, within the diversity and inclusion strategy that I was telling you about, we are talking about, like, what will be our measures of success, of progress, because we are not there. But what I discovered actually when digging into the awareness is one thing, but the confidence level of people with disabilities that they actually apply for a job, not at Google, at companies, is quite low. I was very upset to discover that, because that means that there is more work to driving confidence in someone's talent that is out there. We know that it's out there. It's just that we need to empower that. So this is a more difficult thing to do. And in honesty, we are, just as we speak, within the team, we are thinking about how to start doing that. So driving awareness, yes, that people are welcomed at my company, at Google, but at the same time, how to help the people with disabilities groups to trust, to empower them, to give it a try, to be active, to not to consider them unemployable.
It's actually extremely important what you're saying, in that we all know that the challenge, the problem has much deeper roots than just awareness, and helping raise confidence. Now that you've said it, the talent is out there. There's not enough self-belief, self-confidence. You've just mentioned one of the barriers that business comes across, and that is this lack of confidence, among other things. Are there any other major barriers you come across in this process?
So I think the once within, the barrier is the barrier of lack of experience. Okay, we are not surrounded by people with disabilities. Therefore, when they join our company, we learn with them the do's and don'ts. You know, one of my deepest experiences over the last couple of years was actually sitting next to a person that had a sight disability, and I realized only by literally sitting next to Konrad how you know how more empathetic I can be about his world and his performance and him being part of the of our community. And I do believe that if this would be we usually know how to do things that we or how to behave in environments that are familiar to us. If the environment where there are no people with disabilities is our world, then once we invite people with disabilities to our world, it takes time to learn how to work together. And but it is an amazing experience. We just need time and experience in doing that.
Magda, I would like to say on behalf of the organizers, we're really grateful to have you here address this topic, and for giving us such an honest, straightforward perspective to complex areas of it. We have two questions coming to you and less than a minute to address them. Marlena, is it necessary to have an official disability status to receive accommodations during recruitment process and later on after joining the company? That's question one. Emily, coming from an autism charity for children and young people with an employ autism arm, how can we get involved with Google so that we can support you in employing more autistic people and making them feel included?
So, question number one, no, absolutely not. And that actually, the question touches on a bigger challenge that we have, which is how to quantify the talent of people with disabilities, because it goes way beyond to what we disclosed in the formal or the legal statement, right? That's one thing. So I think we set our bar high that we should feel we want to create an inclusive working environment for people with disabilities, whether that disability is disclosed or not. As my understanding is that almost like 2/3 of disabilities are not disclosed. So this gives you the magnitude of the challenge that we are having. And for the second question, maybe if that person can contact me via LinkedIn, I'm positive that we will find out a way. And thank you for offering help. And I am actually in search of partners who can help us accelerate this element of our strategy, which is hiring more people, having a higher representation of people with disabilities, regardless of the disability they represent.
And we have one final question, even though no time left whatsoever. How many people with disabilities work in Google and in Google recruitment team?
I can't answer that question because we do not. First of all, I can't answer that question just because how we disclose whether to disclose the disability, your disability, is something that that is up to the employee, right? So it's like it's not yet measurable. But one of the things that we are trying to do is we are trying to give employees a chance to self-identify using a consent declaration. So those that want to identify as disabled people, or sorry, wrong language as a person with disability, can do that through our system, so that we have a better system of measuring that. So that I hope that in a year from now, when you invite me to this conference, I will be able to give you more tangible numbers, because collecting employees' data related with people with disabilities is probably a subject to a separate fireside chat, as it's not easy.
Well, I hope I can say it on behalf of the organizers. Do expect an invitation for next year's conference. Magda, it's been an absolute honor to have you with us. Thank you. Magda Kotlarczyk, Country Director, Google Poland.
Thank you.